so much, Sundram, for being here and sharing your work. My question is, when you first approached Nakbar with the idea of, hey, I'd like to make a movie about you, what was his reaction? Because art can obviously be, the expression of one's worldview to share, but it also can be a very private journey, a private process. And so I wondered what his reaction was and how involved he was in the making of the final film, in terms of the messaging and the overall.
Yes, he was initially, the way I approached him was, I want to make a film, and I knew he's quite proud as a person. And so I knew that he wasn't going to give me entree into this inner world that I needed to get into. And not having made a film, I couldn't convince him that I'm going to make a good film and it's going to represent you well. So I told him, listen, I'm going to make a film. Now, if it's not up to the mark, I'm going to make it into archival footage and give it to Graham Foundation, which they wanted. That's what I told him. So it's a good thing for you to have this footage, and I'm willing to spend this much of time. And so that's how I opened up. And he wasn't, I showed him the film towards end, the first edit, rough cut. And what he was concerned about, he said, why do you have so many dancers and all these other things? Why don't you have my story in the initial? At that point I realized, no, I need to sort of not show him anymore. So I was trying to communicate to him that no one's going to watch you just because you have a story to tell. It has to be because the language is cinematic. And that's what I was trying to reach out.
It was a very good movie, very nice. Kosian Lain here. I'd like to ask this question regarding the scripture that you have created on the movie of the artist. Is there a possibility that this artist is probably having a show in India itself? I mean, the kind of like probably you have another views of his work going into India, that kind of thing. A movie about him having it in India from where he is now.
We showed it at the twice. We showed it at the India International Center, and luckily I have a cousin who's a very well-known Hollywood film star, and she opened it. Because of her, over 300 plus people came, and so they had to open up a second auditorium. Within that context, a lot of people immediately got exposed to his work because he hadn't shown it in India, ever. He had a small show at the Pundol Gallery about 20 years ago, but that was it. So when they saw the work, now I know that they're working with the National Gallery of Modern Art to have an exhibition there. And the Ministry of Culture was the person who introduced the film. So there's a dialogue taking place on that basis. But this is what it does, If you look at an exhibition, if you have 5,000 people show up, it's a major blockbuster. But a film, you can touch millions of people. You can put it up, and that's the difference between the two mediums.
Do we have any more questions? Yes, one up the back there.
Thank you so much for a wonderful movie. A question I wanted to ask is whether we in Singapore are going to witness any of the works of Natwar Bowser at any of the galleries here. Thank you.
Yeah, you will. Yeah. It's good to happen in the future. Yes.
I have one for you. At the end, obviously you go through such a process with the artist and a journey, and you being a gallerist as well, art on the walls is emotive, it creates emotions in people and it's subjective. So, I mean, I got a sense from that film that you take with the type of filmmaking an essence of the artist. That there was a gentleness, and as someone said, in the film, almost a meditative state he goes into, which actually came through in the feeling and the emotion of the film, which is quite unusual because, I mean, you can look at a painting on the wall and get a feeling, but actually watching that film about the artist, you also got that feeling as well. How easy is it for you to sort of put that to bed and then go on to the next film? Because I would imagine you take a lot of that with you.
Yeah, I was really, really closely involved, and I was thinking about it all the time. I would go to sleep and I would think about the structure of the film and how to sort of end. But now it's been about 2 years, more or less, a year and a half, and I'm in the middle of actually filming the next film. So, but that also film has a very similar sensibility, and the architect happens to be a world-famous architect. So it's completely different because more and more people want to be involved in this film. But he was a philosopher, this American architect who was a Jewish background, but he worked in an Islamic country. So there are all these kind of amazing sort of intercultural dialogue taking place, and how open people were before as to what has happened today. So it's a similar process, but it's in terms of architecture as opposed to visual.
So the next film might have a bit more structure and less meditative flow, I guess, if you're dealing with an architect.
Louis Kahn, I don't know if you know, if you look at the first generation architect, which is Frank Lloyd Wright and Le Corbusier and Mies van der Rohe, and that all the way up to 1950s, when you saw the Guggenheim Museum, that was in the 54 or so that was built, and they were over by then. The next generation, which is only one individual who dominates the architectural world, had the biggest and most profound impact in the architectural world is Louis Kahn. And the reason for that is that he struggled, and he was truly a philosopher architect. And it took about 10, 15 years. He died as a lonely person, returning back from the subcontinent, and he died sort of at Penn Station. That's the filming that we did. But it's so many people have been affected by him. It's a large number of people. And he was a global citizen in those days, not today. Today, an architect, Libeskind and Foster and all these people are building everywhere. But 1950s, to build across, and across the remote places, it's really remarkable, actually.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else that would like to ask a question before we wrap it up? No? I know from my perspective there was a lot in that film. We weren't just seeing the life of an artist, as I mentioned before, we're seeing so much more. And it's the type of film that you would like to watch again and again because I think you get more out of it. I mean, you're caught up in the colour, but then you're interested in history. So is there a place that we can see the film again? I mean, can we get a catalogue of the film so that we can see what's coming up, so that we can continue this journey with you?
Yeah, there was a Los Angeles distributing company. They wanted to distribute the film, but it's still in the film circuit, which is a film festival circuit, and you can't commercially release it. So what I'll do is I'll leave some, maybe this art house, if they want to show the film, as long as I don't sell, I'm fine. So that's what I'll do. Or if you want to get in touch with Florence, and she'll have it for you.
Will there be a time that it'll be commercially available?
Yeah, within a year's time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. And thank you with you today. That wraps it up for this evening. I'm sure if you have any more questions or you'd like to speak with Mr. Tagore personally and he's able to assist you with some of your questions, please feel free. He'll be mingling after, I believe, for a little while. So thank you very much, and thank you so much for coming to share the film with us as well. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.